So in the last lecture, we talked about the self and different psychological phenomena building around the self, that everybody notices us, we're terrific, or at least above average, and what we do makes sense. What I want to do here is very briefly give a core finding of attribution theory, which is a theory that explores how we make sense of ourselves and others. So attribution theory explores causes of people's behavior. In everyday life, we try to explain why certain events and behaviors occur. And an early researcher named Hyder proposed that we naturally attribute others' actions to personality characteristics. And this is sometimes known as a person bias. And it's a bias because it's not always accurate. We tend to give too much weight to personality and not enough weight to situational variables. This is sometimes known also as the fundamental attribution error. And there are a lot of examples of this. One study, which is kind of fun, is you put people in a situation, two people, one where they get to ask hard questions that they make up. Another one has to answer the hard questions. And so if you play this, plainly, it's easy for somebody to make hard questions that another person can't answer. So you do that. One person asks a hard question, the other one doesn't answer. Repeat. Then we ask a third person, who's smarter? And even if the decision of who to ask the questions or to answer the questions was determined by the toss of a coin, people think that the question asker was smarter. After all, they asked all the hard questions and the other person didn't know the answers to them, ignoring the fact that this is entirely the product of circumstances. And in general, a lot of everyday life works this way. So people tend to overestimate the intelligence of professors. They do so because when they listen to a professor talk and they see him in class or they see her at a seminar or at a conference, they hear the professor talking in great detail about what he or she knows the most about. And they assume, wow, that's really smart. The person really seems to be smart. Missing the fact that, of course, professors tend to teach and talk about the very small area that they know about. It's the circumstances of being asked to teach in an area that makes them look smart, that makes them say smart things, not any natural psychological giftedness. The most extreme demonstration of the fundamental attribution error or the person bias is in a fascinating tendency we have to see actors as if they're the characters they play. So Robert Young was famously was a pitchman for Sanka Coffee, and even though his main expertise was he played a doctor on television. Now, when someone is playing a doctor on television and doing doctor things and saving lives and giving doctor advice, the rational conclusion is they're doing so because this is the situation they're in. They're an actor and these are their lines. But the mind doesn't work that way. When we see somebody do something, our natural tendency for an attribution is to attribute it to the person themselves. And so we credit Robert Young with the accomplishments of Marcus Welby, MD. For this reason, for instance, people tend to think Sylvester Stallone is a tough macho guy because he plays in movies where he's a tough macho guy, even though he spent Vietnam in Switzerland, I think teaching at a girls' school, if I remember right. My very favorite example is that of the actor Leonard Nimoy, who's was extremely interesting actor. Played many roles, led a rich life, was forever identified with his main character, the emotionless Vulcan Spock on Star Trek. So much so that he published a book called I Am Not Spock, differentiating himself from the character. And but our person bias is so strong that eventually even he gave up and ultimately published another book saying, the hell with it, I am Spock.